Welcome back to The Rebel's Edge. I'm John Najarian. Pete Najarian and I will break down for you some of those inputs that go into CPI, Consumer Price Index, and why it is running hot right now. That, a little fantastic futures, some stocks, and of course sports, all that and more on The Rebel's Edge. Bang!
All right. We're off and running, baby.
Let us know what you think of the new opener.
Yeah. Yep.
Jared, well done, Jared. Typed his little fingers into bloody mess, editing all those videos and everything else.
That's great.
But yeah, I like the one with Mark being the shark, Pete. Mark the shark, Mark shark.
He must love that.
Oh,
he's got to love that.
He's got to. This is The Rebel's Edge, and he is Pete Najarian. The more handsome one is on this side of the screen. Every Rebel's Edge, we break down for you macro minute, a little bit of fantastic futures, as we already detailed for you, stocks, and then some sports. And we have all of that coming your way today. So, Pete, let's dive into macro minute. And I'll say it's January inflation was indeed above expectations. They were looking for a slowdown. They did not get it. Food, gas, housing pushed the inflation rate higher to like 3.3, I think, Pete. They were looking for 3.1. What do you got?
Not good. You're exactly right. I think that has to be the macro. There is nowhere else to point than that today, John. I mean, that's right out in front of us. We're looking at these CPI numbers. I think it shocked a lot of people. Is it reigniting inflation? That's what a lot of people are saying. So is it a problem? Yeah. I mean, this is not what they were expecting. And it's something that I think we're going to have to deal with today. And it's amazing. This is a market, John, that seems to be able to shed off news like this pretty rapidly. So we'll see if they're able to. But as of right now, the pressure is on the Dow, the pressure is on the S&P, the pressure is on the NASDAQ to the downside. And it is not a great day if you're long today, unless you're in exactly the right stocks.
Yep. We came up off the bottom and then kind of drifted back a little lower, Pete, because we were down almost 500. We got as low as down 240, I think, in the Dow, Pete. But right now, we're down about 366, which is about 0.8%. And that's all, of course, because people are a little concerned about, well, can the Fed actually make the cuts that many people are looking for? And the easy answer to that is not until the second half. And that's not even with certainty, but that's what you and I have been saying all along, I think, Pete.
Yep.
And so my future would be basically those the 10-year and the fact that it moved the 10-year note. When it goes down, interest rates go up, and it was down a bunch right away when that CPI number came out today, Pete.
Yeah, and looking at that, I agree with you, John, and I think that's exactly where I was going too. We don't see a huge spike in the volatility index. It's not massive. It's not something where it's got a lot of fear in there. It's at 16 right now. That's not a big deal, just over 16. But the 10-year is something I think worth talking about, up 2.5% today. It's at a 465. It was 443 1 week ago. That's a pretty big leap in terms of the 10-year, and I think that's something that I'm a little surprised that the NASDAQ's holding in there as well as it is, John, because usually the NASDAQ starts getting pounded pretty good. But this time it's more on the Dow, and the Dow is definitely the one that is getting attacked the most today. And we, as you mentioned, we're down close to 500. We cut it in half, pretty close to, and now we're getting a little bit better. So by the end of the day, it'll be very interesting to see, are we going to still be down 300, 350, maybe 400, or do we start rallying back? We have been, and that's been the history of what we've been doing lately, is rallying back. Will we today? That'll be an interesting one to see.
All right. Well, Pete, we have some unusual, again, for our friends, all of you viewers out there. We did have Upstart which is, of course, a fabulous company. It is really moving nicely to the upside today. And Pete, the AI lending, basically that's how they do what they do. Artificial intelligence helps them rather than a whole bunch of agents sitting there doing it. They can do it with AI. Well, there's that big spike. We had unusual option activity in here. And the 12th of February, there it is right there. They were in here again in Upstart. And I thought that the move was pretty darn good, Pete. So when you look at those calls moving up, that's a pretty good sign that people really liked this report.
They not only liked it, John, I mean, everything that they put out there was pretty impressive. The outlook that they gave up there was awesome. The rise in loans themselves, 245,000 of those, John, up 68% year over year in terms of just the loans themselves. I mean, everywhere I looked, you look over at the conversion rates, that looked pretty strong. Strong margins, that was pretty impressive. Shorts up about 20. Oh, wait a minute. I heard something. I think that was the short squeeze happening, John, because these guys, we're talking about 20% short. Those guys are absolutely getting squeezed. It's hurting. There's a lot of pain there. And I think that's the noise that I'm hearing in the background right now, because it is absolutely getting squeezed to the upside. There are more call buying coming in as we speak. It's a pretty interesting one. And the stock's up almost 30%. Not so bad. It's a pretty damn good day for Upstart.
Yep. Upstart moving up to the east side, Pete, just like
the Jefferson.
Just like Wheezy. Well, let's take a look what else is moving today, folks, because CVS, Walgreens Boots Alliance wishes, that's WBA, wishes they could put up numbers like these guys, because CVS was up 5%, then 8, 9, 10, 11. Right now, Pete, I think they're up almost 15% on the day, basically exceeding street forecasts for both sales and EPS, and operating their insurance arm, Aetna, and their pharmacy network. This is just really good news for them, Pete, because 97, almost 98 billion in revenue for CVS.
And that's
pretty amazing.
And that's up 4% year over year, John. And we talk about that year over year number. We think that's both of us think that's pretty impressive and something that we should be looking at. You look at the healthcare benefits side of it, John, up 23% year over year. That's a damn good number. CVS somehow came in and absolutely knocked it out of the park, John, in every way that they could. It's been up 14%. You were just saying it's up 15%. It's nearing, but not quite at those 52-week highs, which is 81. But it's up there towards 63 or something, maybe even a little bit better. A very, very impressive quarter. And, of course, you look at the forecast, which is the most important thing. That looks really, really strong for 2025. So with all of that said, CVS might have itself in a position to start making a nice move to the upside. Maybe they're the next Walmart out of the pharmaceutical or pharmacy side of things.
Well, Pete, I pulled up a 1-month graph. A 1-month graph shows Walgreens Boots Alliance down 20%. Meanwhile, obviously a lot of this coming today on the big jump. CVS is up 30, but even before today, Pete, they were still up like 14 versus down 19 for Walgreens Boots Alliance. Yeah. And I don't think it gets a lot better if you take it further back. Let's see, it's not as dramatic, but taking it back 6 months, Walgreens down 13%, CVS up 8%. So these two are going in opposite directions, Pete.
Sure are. Yep.
What about KHC? Now, I think you and I would say, Pete, that Warren Buffett is one of the best investors we've ever seen, but he makes mistakes. And one of the mistakes he made was this one, Pete, because Kraft Heinz, he owned at one time about 27%. I don't know how much he owns now. I think he got in there, Pete, with some private equity firm called, and if memory serves, I think it was like 3G or something like that. But don't hold me to it. But if you have 300 million plus shares and the stock puts up a number like Kraft Heinz did today, you're not a happy camper.
No, there's a good reason why that stock is near the 52-week lows, John. You look at the outlook, that was absolutely terrible. 263, 274 was the outlook. They were looking for 304. That's a big problem. The revenue, they missed. The earnings themselves actually were up year over year, 7%. So that's the one positive thing. But organic revenue was down 3% year over year. Operating income, they lost about $40 million there. So Kraft Heinz, this is not a good quarter. It's not even close to a good quarter. It's a problem. And Mr. Buffett, you know, we all make mistakes. Maybe this is one of those where he might have to reevaluate this positioning there, John, because this is a stock that's definitely under some big pressure right now. And as I said, very close to 52-week lows. It's about 2 points off those 52-week lows. Not a great day and not a great earnings coming out of Kraft Heinz today.
Yeah, and Pete, I thought this was more recent than this, but I was just while you were speaking, Googling it or using a little grok, X.AI. Warren Buffett's been in this one since 2013, Pete, and he still hasn't pulled the ripcord.
Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised because 3G, that is the partner that he partnered with, the merger was like 2015, but wow. Kraft profit decline through 2019, and this number today kind of shows they're not out of the woods even now, Pete. So, wow. This has to go down as one of his worst investments. All right, let's finish up, Pete, with VRT. VRT is, of course, data centers and so forth. You and I have talked about how great the demand is in those data centers, in particular for the ones that have liquid cooled or whatever it will take to make them more efficient, because obviously you create a lot of heat in those data centers and hence the liquid cooling. But Vertiv, man, they beat street estimates, but their guidance, that's where the rubber meets the road, Pete, and that was not good.
No, and in this case, John, I always say, hey, it all matters about the guidance itself. And I look over at the year over year, the earnings were up 77%. That's not so bad. Year over year revenue was up 26%. Not so bad. But as you and I talk about all the time, it really comes down to the outlook. Now, here's the one thing. I can understand that the outlook would be a little less than those unbelievable numbers we were just looking at. But I'll tell you, I actually think given the opportunity with this sell-off that we are seeing, it might not be the worst idea in the world to maybe take a nibble or two. And I think if that's the case, this is a stock that I think could start making one of those kind of moves back up towards those highs again, John. Maybe not the 52-week highs themselves, but off of the lows of today, because the stock was getting hit pretty good today, down about 8% or maybe even a little bit more than that. I actually think that might be an opportunity. I think the demand for this is going to be so high that names like Vertiv are going to have a very, very nice run in 2025.
I don't disagree. In fact, Pete, I've got a guest staying with us down here in Puerto Rico, and he and I were looking at this, and he says, so what do you think? And I said, at 110 to 112, right in that band, it looks like it's bounced a couple times.
Yeah.
So I said, I don't think we get down to, what's my other target here, Pete? My other target is basically like 104. I don't think we get there on this one. I don't think these earnings were that bad. So, here it is at mid-session down around 113 and a half, down from a high of whatever, 157 or something like that, Pete.
Yeah.
I'd nibble. I would start nibbling. And one of the ways you can do that, folks, Pete and I used to love to say this to the guys on some of the shows we were on. They would say, well, I like it, but I like it, $5 lower. Okay, sell the put. Sell the put $5 lower. You're a big talker. You want to get into this thing? Sell the put. Well, I don't know. I don't understand options. Well, that means you're not really an investor. You don't really have very many tools in your tool belt, do you? If all you can do is say, well, I like it, but I'd buy it $5 lower. Can you wave a magic wand and make that happen? No, but you can sell a put option. I'm not encouraging you guys to do that if you don't understand options. But if you sell a put, that obligates you to buy at a certain level. Who's one of the biggest put sellers we know, Pete? Warren Buffett.
We just talked about him.
Michael Dell. all of these guys, including a lot of big companies, sell puts. Why?
Mhm.
Because instead of buying the stock, you can obligate yourself to buy it for a certain period of time, but you get to keep the premium if it stays above that. So if I think it's going to hold at about that 110 to 112 level, and I said sold on those 112 puts, I get to keep that even if we just sit here. And the only thing that doesn't work in your favor, I guess, is if it drops 10%, well, you're going to get assigned on those puts. You'll have to buy the stock at the level you said you wanted
At the
to
level,
buy.
I was going to say that, at the level that you said you wanted to buy it. So,
All right. Well, Pete, I know Jared has queued up one of the players that you and I thought was going to be just a superstar. He was the first white defensive back taken in the first round in 39 years. The kid he runs like a deer. DeJean is, of course, his name, from Iowa. And boy, he made a fabulous pick six in the game, and we thought we'd show it to you guys because Sportsville did a nice job putting this one together. So take a look.
Mahomes hasn't seen many situations like this.
he hasn't seen many situations.
Back goes Mahomes. He's rushing. He's looking.
That's a tough throw across your body.
It's intercepted.
Like that.
It's intercepted. Running with the football to the 25, down the far side.
You know, the great part is, John, he could have got caught. He could have got caught, but he wasn't going to let anybody stop him. He really was.
Yeah, watch this. Watch the big offensive lineman go right by him here. He gives him, just goes right by him. He slowed up just enough right there that the big guy couldn't slow down.
Happy birthday, Cooper DeJean. Cooper's a June.
Not a bad birthday present, huh? Was it Saquon too? I think it was his birthday as well. So that's pretty fun.
Keep going.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. The Eagles, I'll tell you what, John, you know, they're one of those franchises that, you know, people associate them with blue collar and for all the right reasons, you know, blah, 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 the fans.
Just
but
like Pittsburgh.
it's great. It's great to watch. It's great fun. And, you know, they have built the team the right way. And you and I have talked about it a long time. And we might talk about it again when we get to our second portion of the sports. But I was going to start off with something in the NBA, John.
All right.
So in the post-Michael Jordan era, and as a matter of fact, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but when Michael Jordan was still playing 30 years ago, they had their highest watched regular season ever, okay? It hasn't happened since 30 years later. And that's probably says something about the NBA. And, you know, you and I have talked about load management and all the rest of this, but they were averaging, you know, 3 million plus viewers back then in 1998. They immediately dropped. The last 20 years, the NBA now is 1.5 to 1.9 million viewers is what we're seeing. So you could almost say it's been cut pretty close in half. As a matter of fact, 49% in the last 25 years. It's down 16% in the last 5 years. And it gives you a little bit of an idea. But there is still a lot of money in the NBA. And you and I are money guys. So I wanted to run this one by you. So Glenn Taylor bought the Timberwolves for $88 million to keep the Timberwolves in Minnesota. $88 million. I didn't have a B anywhere in there. I just wanted to make sure that we got that. So A-Rod, in this case, Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lurie, they went in to try to buy this team not too terribly long ago, but it's been a fight ever since because they missed a payment, John. $1.5 billion off of that $88 million. But here's the interesting part. I don't know if they'll ever start coming down, and they've talked about expanding the NBA 2 more, maybe putting one in Vegas, one somewhere else. But I think the interesting thing about all of this, John, is there are a lot of franchises. When you look at the NBA, you're talking about $4.6 billion is the average of what the NBA value is right now. $4.6 billion. These guys paid $1.5 billion. They might be able to flip this thing if they chose to do that. And they've got Bloomberg with them too, John, in case they have to get some cash really fast. They've got Bloomberg as part of this whole thing. But it's pretty interesting. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what do you think about this? I don't understand how the NBA teams, John, are worth $4.6 billion on average. I just don't see that at all. And a lot of this is estimates, right? So is somebody out there really willing to buy into the NBA, or are they just manufacturing these numbers in some way? What do you think? Because I don't think it's as high as they're saying it is.
Well, Pete, they used to say that the most exclusive club in the world was the United States Senate, because there's obviously 2 senators, 50 states, there's 100 senators. Yeah. Well, there's a hell of a lot less than that owners of these, NBA teams.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, there are multiple owners like Pete just described, folks. But in many cases, it's a single owner. Ballmer, for instance, Steve Ballmer. Now, I don't know that he's allocated any shares to anybody other than himself, but he is the reason that these things are trading for the billions that they're trading for. Because had he not paid that stupid number, Pete, for his team, we would not be seeing these, is my belief, because it's not justifiable. NFL, it is justifiable, only because they have, what is it, Pete, 51 or 52% of the revenue goes to the players, and the rest goes to the owners. And of course, they don't count some of their revenue. Now, they always get renegotiated into on the next contract, but they don't always share the skybox revenue. They don't always share the jerseys and things like that are sold within their confines and all that kind of stuff. But I will say, Pete, no way. They're not worth it.
Me neither.
You can't make a case to me that any NBA team is worth $4.6 billion. But I will say that Adelson, who bought 73% of Mark Cuban's team, she's going to move it back to Vegas. So if somebody wants to be in Vegas, they better do it soon, because when Mark Cuban started popping off in a very liberal fashion, you know what happened? They said, you ain't getting a casino down here. And that's the reason she bought in, was she wants a casino around the team, around basically an experiential area, Pete, with a hotel, casino, basketball team, and so forth. Develop the whole thing right there in Dallas. Well, Texas is pretty deep red, and Cuban kind of pissed him off, and I don't think he's ever getting a casino down there, Pete. So I bet that one moves to Vegas.
Yeah. If they can. Yeah, the NBA wants to not have somebody move there, but maybe they can work it out. Maybe they can figure out how they can get that done. It'll be interesting to watch anyway. John, back to college football for a moment. We talk about sports all the time at college level. We talk about the NIL stuff. We talk about all of these various things. How about the portal? Now, a lot of people aren't very familiar with this whole thing, but there's a GM role now these days in college sports, college football particularly. And most of the schools, I think most of the very successful schools, have really jumped onto this thing, and for the right reasons. So I'll bet you can't guess who it is that has had the most success in the portal this year since December 9th. Is it Texas? It's not Texas. Is it USC? It's not USC. Is it Michigan? Is it Texas A&M with all their money and everything else to be able to go out there and grab people in the portal? No. It's Texas Tech of all this. Texas Tech has had the most success, John. They were very close this year in the Big 12. They had a good run at it. They didn't get there. How about this for some of their numbers? They have 7 of the top 75 transfers have gone to the school. They signed 17 kids to move to come back either to Texas or to bring them to Texas to play for Texas Tech. And that all started December 9th. They got a general manager out there, John, by the name of James Blanchard. And he basically said, hey, look, I've got the magical thing on how to get these kids to come here. And one of those magical parts of it is the money. And so they just immediately just went to one of their biggest donors and said, what's the most you can give us? He goes, I want a winner. He goes, yeah, but what's the most? He goes, pretty much unlimited. He gave him $10 million, John, and just said, go spend it. He did. And Notre Dame said, this guy's done such a good job, they offered him a job. He said, well, you can't pay me enough at Notre Dame because I'm getting paid so much here at Texas Tech, it doesn't really matter. So he did not go. He's still at Texas Tech. 90% of what he said he does on a day in and day out basis, John, is just collecting information, not watching film, not doing this, just trying to get any information about all these players. And I think it's a really interesting role to see how these general managers, each one is doing something different. But Texas Tech, John, that is a team, that's a school that we all need to keep a very close eye on, because it won't just end with just football. They're going to do it in basketball. They're going to go into all the various sports that they can and go out there and out-recruit everybody. And it's really interesting, I think, to see what's going on in college sports with these general managers that are basically just like the NFL. I mean, NCAA has turned into the NFL. It really has.
Well, and you've made that point very well, Pete, for a better part of a year. The portal, well, that's free agency.
Yep.
NIL, well, that's your payroll. As good as they do, Pete, I think it's still going to be tough for them to outcompete Ohio State.
Yep.
Because, Ohio State, now that they got that unbelievable season behind them, even though they lost 2 games, the fact that they came back through the playoffs and just decimated everybody, that they played in there. That is going to be a tough team to beat.
Yeah.
And tough team to out-recruit. Yeah. But as you said, if you get 7 of the top 75, a 10% thing like that, that's pretty damn good. And it's just like when we talk about Myles Garrett, you only have to have a few really big impact players. The video that Jared just ran for us of Cooper DeJean, the kid runs a 4.15. So there's no way in heck Mahomes thought when he threw that ball sideways as he did that any D-back could break on that ball as he did, because you saw that his wide receiver was sliding to make that catch just off the ground. And meanwhile, Cooper just made a plant and went. And if you have that, again, you can't defend speed. And if you have somebody like that, you can dominate. And Myles Garrett is a player like that, just like Cooper DeJean. And man, it's amazing though, Cooper being whatchamacallit, Pete, a rookie in his rookie year. And by the way, I already said 39 years, Pete. Nobody had drafted a white defensive back in the first round in 39 years. How about this stat also? No rookie had a pick 6 in a Super Bowl in 39 years. It has happened, but it's been 39 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's a talented kid. That defense, that offense. I mean, you can't say enough good things about what Philadelphia has been able to do. You got to give Howie all the credit in the world, because he has put it together. He drafted those guys. He drafted all those guys from Georgia. He did all of the homework that he needed to do to build the team that they've got. And it's pretty damn impressive. Now, every year's a new year, injuries, this, that, and the other, and drafts, and somebody else maybe makes a really good move. There's a lot going on in the world, John, talking about quarterbacks, by the way. And Matthew Stafford's name keeps coming up every single day. And it's kind of interesting, because here he is, a Ram, and he's still their quarterback, but it gets talked about every day on ESPN, on the radio, or on TV, or wherever, about what are some of the landing spots of Sam Darnold and, some of these other players. And it's getting pretty interesting right now, which just plays into the NFL 24/7, 365. That's what they are, John.
True. Well, folks, again, look at that right down there in the corner. That's our QR code for the event out in Vegas. So RebelCon 2025, it's going to be great. We've got Grant Cardone speaking. We've got Bryn Talkington speaking. We've got Charlie Gasparino interviewing and speaking. Same thing with Liz Clayman. It's going to be a fabulous event. Mark is out there. Mark the Shark is out there right now lining up some entertainment and so forth. If you want to have a great time and learn some tricks of the trade like Pete and I do every day, well, by all means, check out that QR code, sign up now, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.